The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to uclabruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after the Guy Benson Show at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my buddy Randy Wang at 5. Motec on Money. We are live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And, of course, the on-demand Motec on Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. A mixed finish to a volatile and losing week for stocks. Silver and gold at record highs to wrap up the week, with silver closing above $100 an ounce for the first time. Yep, you heard me. Silver above $100 an ounce. Gold is just a whisker below $5,000 an ounce. Copper is also at a record high today. The week started with renewed threats of a transatlantic trade war, and looks like President Trump spoke in Davos. Looks like no action on Greenland is imminent. But now the focus of attention returns to the Middle East, with President Trump saying a U.S. armada is heading to the Middle East as the Iran death toll has been put above 5,000 on the ongoing crackdown on dissent in Iran. President Trump threatening additional tariffs, though, on some of America's longest-standing allies in a bid to acquire Greenland and then walk them back this past week. The major averages finished the week showing few signs that they had narrowly avoided a potential trade shock, with the Dow closing down today 285 points, settling at 49,099. The S&P 500 moved up 2 points at 6,916. The NASDAQ up 65 at 23,501. Looks like for the week, the major averages were down about 0.5%. Intel shares tumbling today 17%. That company reported a larger than expected quarterly loss as the earnings parade continued. We're watching surging demand for heating and power fuel impacting the natural gas market, which got a big spike this week. Oil futures also up about 3% this week. Oil right now hovering at around $61.30 a barrel, up $1.94. NVIDIA shares moving up nearly $3 today at $187 and change. NVIDIA has pegged its China revenue potential at about $50 billion a year. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment. In the meantime, airlines canceled nearly 6,000 flights through this weekend ahead of a big winter storm expected to hit two-thirds of the United States over the weekend, with flights out of Dallas already among the most affected. Severe winter weather back east. What's happening here in California? Well, California's looking to raise taxes while other states are working to lower or eliminate state income tax altogether. We'll get an update on what's happening here as well as around the country with affordability, including tax affordability, big issues nowadays. We'll be joined later this hour live by Grover Norquest, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. And heads up on what's turned out to be a new way to get ripped off thanks to technology. It's called ghost tapping, where unbeknownst to you, your credit card or digital wallet is tapped, allowing scammers to rack up unauthorized transactions without a card or your phone ever leaving your possession. How does that happen? Well, Paul Keener at Guide Point Security will be joining us live to explain what you have to watch out for. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now to wrap up this week. Joining us live, Dan Ives, the world traveler, including Davos this week, the world's top tech analyst, managing director and global head of technology research at Wedbush Securities, which happens to be based here in Southern California. He's also chairman of 8Co Holdings, also known as Orbs, with WorldCoin as its primary reserve asset. Daniel Ives, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
Yeah, great to be on with you, Frank, and we miss you in Davos.
Give us an update on what's happening there in Davos right now and what's happened there this week.
Look, I mean, besides a lot of late nights, I mean, we're, definitely it's pretty good seeing. But in terms of the actual, look, it's about AI revolution. I mean, when you walk in the pavilion, it's all U.S. tech. There's one European tech company and no Chinese tech. And I think that was a big theme, AI tech dominating in this AI revolution. Of course, you had the Greenland stuff, Trump coming and obviously Musk and others. Pretty bullish week, Frank, especially when you combine it with CES in Vegas. it's hard not to be bullish on tech here.
All right, what was it like with President Trump there this week?
I mean, there was a lot of white. I think a lot of white knuckles coming in, right? I mean, a lot of Europeans, were definitely nervous, and I think it was a seminal moment, right? Because I think there was a lot of nervousness for tech CEOs as well as politicians, and the fact that he came in there, gave that speech 10 minutes after you basically got a deal for Greenland. I mean, that's a risk on, right? And I think relative for the markets, it's exactly what you wanted to hear. Look, it kind of felt like a Rocky movie, It was definitely a lot of tension going in, but ultimately, Rocky ended up winning that 12-round battle.
Must have been wild. We had that big drop, about an 800-point drop one day this past week, and then a bit of a rebound, and then a mixed finish here at the close. Fast forward to wrap up the week here. Elon Musk spoke there too, right? Were you there for Elon's speech and any other big speeches? What about Jensen Huang from NVIDIA? Any other takeaways there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, we were with a lot of them this week. Obviously, Godfather, Jensen was there, Musk. Look, I think Musk's speech was really interesting, especially around physical AI, robotaxis, autonomous, Optimus. Very, very bullish speech by Musk. And this is also in the heels of what's going to be the SpaceX IPO, right? As we get into later this year.
Right, yeah. Tell us about that. What did he say about that? I remember talking to him about that when he lived in Bel Air already years ago. But here we are now. SpaceX about to go public, and looks like there's some other ancillary equities, right, that are somehow have a connection to SpaceX. So tell us what we need to know about that.
He didn't talk about that, of course, just given the registration, but it's really about disruptive technology in terms of everything that's happened. I think it's a very bullish time for U.S. tech. As me and you have talked about, it's the first time in 30 years the U.S. is ahead of China when it comes to tech.
On there live with Daniel Ives at Wedbush, the leading tech analyst around the world and also the best dressed, by the way. Somebody was wearing fuchsia in Beverly Hills today. I thought it might be you. He was wearing fuchsia and like a cowboy hat, but it wasn't you. You're still in Davos, so that's even better. On there live with Daniel Ives. What about cryptos here? It was a rough week for cryptos with Bitcoin at around 89.4 here at the moment. In the meantime, the precious metals continue on their record run with the silver as we speak at $103 and change, gold just below 5K. Give us your reaction to digital gold as well as the analog gold moves.
And Frank, before hitting that, I definitely, for Davos next year when you come, I could picture the outfit. You're wearing your fur hat, one of those $2,000 suits that you usually wear, with some cool boots. I picture the Motec sort of outfit already.
Boots with the fur.
Yeah, boots with fur. I see it. Maybe some sort of sparkles and stuff. Look, silver. The path for silver and gold is still higher. I mean, I don't see what's going to stop that train as it plays out, and that's why I tell you, like, it's a bullish setup for silver. It's bullish setup for gold. Fed, you're clearly going to see cuts, especially when new chairman comes in replacing Powell. And I think Bitcoin's the one where you're still seeing a consolidation play out here.
I can dispense with the sparkles, but everything else you said might be viable. By the way, we have the Davos of Beverly Hills here, the milk and...
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
Hey, I'm Chris Van Vliet, host of the #1 podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet. On the show, I sit down with the biggest names in pro wrestling, sports, film, and beyond. These are real, long-form conversations that go behind the scenes and beyond the headlines with people like John Cena, The Undertaker, Cody Rhodes, and more. We talk mindset, motivation, and what it takes to succeed. This is Insight with Chris Van Vliet. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Global conference. Hopefully you'll be there
And I'll
coming
be
up
there.
here in April and May. Yeah.
Frank, I'll be there. I'll be wearing my my special Motec suit.
Whatever it is, I'm sure we'll notice your presence there, and so we look forward to that. But what about there's been a lot of write-ups here. So precious metals have been a get-rich-slow scheme with silver. Grandpa making more money than some people involved in crypto holding on to silver coins.
Yeah. So, dude, it's a bullish setup for silver. I mean, look today. I don't see what slows silver down here, in my view.
Even after this impressive run-up, we got silver above.
Yeah, but I mean, you can have consolidation, but I think the path for silver is still higher.
Now, how high?
I mean, I think silver could probably have a 30% run this year.
Wow. And what about gold? Is it going to clear 5K this weekend or early next week?
I think you're going to have the 5,000 gold hat out for next week.
And P.S. we got copper, which we've noted on this program is largely tied to the economy. That's the way it's been historically. They say it's the only metal with a degree in economics. They call it Dr. Copper. Copper also at a record high at $5.94 a pound here at the moment, or $13,800 a ton, which is probably what you deal in. What about copper here?
Yeah, but also, Frank, I mean, I view copper as a derivative of AI. When you think about data center build-outs and everything else, I view it like that as well. And I think it's a bullish for copper, too. You're going to continue to see that go higher. Rio Tinto and others, potential names.
Yeah. What else? Any big takeaways on AI? Of course, you love your write-ups on AI and NVIDIA, and we see NVIDIA stock ending the week up nearly $3 today, back to $187 and change. Any other insights into what's next for AI and NVIDIA?
Look, next week's going to be a huge week for AI. Investors are discounting the scale and scope of this. And I continue to tell you, this is going to be a bullish tech market. I think it's going to be a very big earnings season to show the demand that's playing out on AI. I think it all starts next week.
We got some wild cards next week with an armada heading to Iran, that area. What's your view on oil and what's going to happen there?
I mean, you have the two bad actors that are gone, Venezuela and Iran. Oil is going lower. That's bullish for markets. Bullish for inflation. That's how I just view it. I'm not these are all bullish for the setup for 2026.
All right, since you're still in Davos, what's the mood there in Europe over the Greenland situation? And is this deal that the president presented going to happen?
Look, I think a lot were skeptical going in. And the reality is they came in a deal because, look, it's like the reality is that whether it's American tech or American exceptionalism, it's back, right? And I think there was a worry it was going away. And I could tell you as an American in Davos, you could feel it. And I think the Greenland situation getting resolved in the way that it did, I think is just a bullish setup. And I think there's definitely a lot of Europeans maybe shaking their hands, but it's just a reality, right? In terms of where the power, and you're seeing it play out.
You mentioned Sparkle earlier. We see that California Governor Newsom was sidelined there in Davos. Did you see him, and what if any reaction was there to his presence there?
Yeah, I mean, I did see him, and that was a little soap opera going on. I wouldn't expect him and Lutnick to do any candlelight dinners anytime soon, or Besson.
Right.
It's but look, I mean, that's why Davos, to some extent, it's a soap opera as it plays out. I mean, it was definitely it was good fodder to watch from the outside. It was sitting there on the ground.
How exciting! That's really terrific. Now, has your flight been delayed due to the huge winter storm that's gripping
Dude,
half the
I'm
country?
about to get my flight. I'm about to get my flight right now.
Wow.
Get back to a snowy New York, but
Hope.
Hopefully get there without delay.
Well, we expect updates during the flight. I'll be in touch with you and appreciate it. Wish we had more time here, Daniel Ives. We'll let you enjoy your last moments there in Davos.
Frank,
and wish you a safe trip.
I got the fur hat and the Cabernet ready for you for next year. Okay.
All right, you're all set. Terrific, Dan. Thank you very much for taking the call live with us here, live from Davos, the Davos World Economic Forum, where Daniel Ives was in the mix there. Live with us here on Motec on Money on 790 KABC. Airlines, by the way, have canceled about 6,000 flights through the weekend, so hopefully he gets out okay. That is Daniel Ives, who is the top tech analyst at Wedbush Securities, based right here in Southern California. Live with us here on Motec on Money on 790 KABC. Oh, yeah. Motec on Money continues, 790 KABC. We got a mixed finish here on Wall Street today with the Dow down 285, the S&P 500 up 2, the NASDAQ closing up 65 points. Tech names on the rebound today, including NVIDIA, up $2.83 at the close of 187 and change. Gold and silver continue to shine. Silver is above $100 an ounce at the close today for the first time ever, up $6.89 to $103.26 an ounce. And gold got another pop today, up nearly $70 at $4,983 and change. Looks like gold has seen its biggest weekly gain ever in dollar terms, and since March 2020 during the COVID lockdown market panic on a percentage basis. Gold has added about $650 an ounce so far this month, including a record one-day gain of $171 and change on Tuesday. Gold rallied on President Trump since rescinded threats to slap additional tariffs on Europe in his quest for Greenland and heightened concern about the independence of the Federal Reserve. Looks like futures for delivery later in the year are already trading above $5,000 an ounce. Right now, gold, I'm looking at it here at $4,983 and change. Looks like digital gold not having such a good week, with Bitcoin right now hovering at around 89,400. Ethereum, ETH as it's also known, at 2,950 or so, and Doge at the moment at 12 cents. The volatility index has been all over the place this week. That's what it does. The VIX index, the volatility index, Wall Street's so-called fear index, had a spike of nearly 30% earlier in the week when we saw that one-day washout when the Dow was down about close to 900 points. The VIX index today moved up by 3%. On the mixed finish we saw on Wall Street, the dollar has its worst week in a couple of months. Copper, by the way, also at a record high today at $5.94 a pound, or $13,800 a ton. Checking the other metals, palladium got a pop today, up $119 and change to $2,047. That's been a big move recently as well. And platinum up nearly $200 at $2,773.20 an ounce as the metals continue to shine, and that so-called Burl Ives trade continues post-holiday season, with gold and silver leading the charge at record highs. Once again, gold just a whisker below $5,000 at the close today, and silver blew past $100 an ounce today, right now at $103.26. What else is happening? Well, we're watching what's happening with Iran as President Trump said again today that there's an armada heading toward the Middle East in case it's needed. President Trump says the U.S. Armada is heading to the Middle East as the Iran death toll has been put above 5,000. President Trump says we have a lot of ships going in that direction. The price of oil and all this moving higher today, up $1.94 to $61.30 a barrel. Elsewhere, we're watching what's happening with this massive snowstorm impacting the airlines. The airline stocks were in focus today. The airlines canceled about 6,000 flights through this weekend ahead of that big winter storm that's expected to hit two-thirds of the United States this weekend. Already Dallas among the most affected. The severe winter weather will bring widespread travel disruptions, including a heavy snowstorm in the Northeast and super cold temperatures and gusty winds in the southern Great Plains and elsewhere, according to the National Weather Service. Natural gas in all this also got a big spike this week. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Motec and Money continues here, 790 KABC. California looking to raise taxes while other states are working to lower or eliminate their state income taxes altogether, for example. Let's get an update on what's happening here as well as around the country now with affordability, a big issue, including taxes. Joining us live now is the one and only Grover Norquest, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Oh, absolutely. Good to be with you.
All right, take it from the top and tell us what's happening here. You've been hearing about this proposed billionaire tax here in California and some other taxes that the city of Los Angeles is also considering. Give us your reaction to what's happening here and how does this compare with other places?
Well, California is not completely by itself in raising taxes at a time when people are concerned about affordability. And affordability has two sides. One is, what's your take-home pay? Tax increases are pay cuts. Tax increases are pay cuts. Tax reduction, tax cuts are pay increases. So if you want people to be able to afford more, you want them to have a bigger paycheck, a bigger take-home paycheck, not just what's written there before you take stuff out of it. Unfortunately, California and now Virginia on the East Coast just elected a Democrat governor to go with a legislature that's Democrat, and they are talking about all sorts of tax increases, starting with a tax increase that will raise the cost of energy by $1,100 per home, joining one of those groups where you get together and make imaginary, you buy or sell something that's supposed to claim that you're not using a certain amount of real energy, which raises the cost of everything. So Virginia, and as you point out, both California, state and local are raising taxes. The biggest challenge for California is this tax on property, a tax on wealth, a tax on all your property, not just your house, but stocks or bonds or a small business you created, land, a farm. All of this stuff gets caught up in the tax. And wealth taxes around the world, there used to be 12 in Europe. 8 of them got rid of it. They said this was too destructive to the economy. People were fleeing. Nobody who plays guitar in Britain and makes any money stays in Britain. And people who play tennis in Norway and Sweden leave there. There are 4 countries in Europe that have a prop tax, a wealth tax. The 3 of them are basically hollowed out. Spain has one. It's pretty damaging, but it's not as bad as it once was. This is something that does more damage than good to the host country, the host state. California should really look around and see what's happened in other countries that actually had these taxes. So you're seeing people are moving out. I mean, I don't know what the final numbers are, but estimates as much as $1 trillion in wealth. People leave California, become citizens of another state, and that is the beginning of having the people who built the tech revolution and made California wealthy and successful, and the government wealthy, if not successful, is going to stop growing in California. Not everyone's going to leave, but people will stop moving there, and some will leave. So it's a disaster for California, it's great news for Texas and Florida and Tennessee and other states like that.
On there live with Grover Norquest, America's leading taxpayer advocate. In addition to the billionaires tax that's being considered at a state level here in the Los Angeles area, they're looking at a what they're calling an overpaid CEO tax. Looks like the unions in particular.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.
The Inside of You podcast.
You're listening to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. Let's get inside of Sebastian Maniscalco.
This whole podcasting thing, right?
I was doing it before every actor and their mother wanted a podcast.
Did you wake up one day and go, I gotta talk to people? You're an actor.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're Barbara Walters.
Yeah.
How do we make
It happened by accident. I had no idea people would start listening. But when you're genuine, that's what attracts people.
The Inside of You podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
The Unite Here Local 11 has been pushing this initiative that targets folks, business owners primarily, that would tax CEOs who they consider are overpaid. What's your reaction to that? And has there been anything like that any place?
Well, when you do that, CEOs move. And when CEOs move, the rest of the country, the rest of the business doesn't move right away, but they begin to. I mean, I don't know what union they belong to, but if it's a public sector union, they don't care if they destroy a whole company and everybody leaves. They still get paid by the government. But if it's a private sector company, chasing away the people who manage the firm and the people who invest in it means the whole company dies at some point. So that is really self-sacrifice. I had not heard of that. When I've heard the argument, these people are paid too much. Well, if you do that, you drive the talent away, and you end up with people who make the company go bankrupt, and then there are no jobs.
And then under this Billionaire Tax Act, Californians worth more than $1 billion would pay a one-time 5% tax on their total wealth. The Service Employees International Union, the union behind this, that's the one that's pushing that at a state level. So already, as you mentioned, in anticipation of even the possibility of this happening, we have seen some very prominent billionaires clear out of here and move to Florida and elsewhere. So we're going to continue to watch what's happening on that front. In the meantime, places like Florida looking to eliminate their state income tax. They don't have a state income tax, looking to eliminate their property tax, right? So they're trying to eliminate even more taxes there.
Oh, yes. They're looking mostly to limit the property taxes, to put caps on, kind of like Prop 13. They have something like Prop 13. They want to strengthen it in Florida and in other states. Remember, Washington State put a big capital gains tax. They didn't have a capital gains tax before. So they put in a capital gains tax, and half of the money they were planning on, going to be rich, says the government. Half of the money they were planning to get was going to come from looting Mr. Bezos, who founded and built up in Washington State Amazon. And he said, I'm out of here. How many of his senior managers who also own stock in the company do you think leave as well? I don't know how many did, but I know he left, and that was half the money they wanted. You mentioned that you have to have $1 billion to get hit by the billionaire's tax. Well, I think California is probably aware of what happened in Maryland. They had a millionaire's tax. Okay, you had to have $1 million. You had to make $1 million. Well, that wasn't raising any money. So they decided that if you had $1 million or a house worth $1 million or savings worth $1 million, and you got 10% interest on it, that would be $100,000. So anyone with an income of $100,000, they reclassified as a millionaire, because earning $100,000 a year is kind of like having $1 million because that's the interest that you get for that. And therefore went from a millionaire's tax being people who had earned $1 million, then to people who had $1 million, then to people who kind of had the equivalent of having $1 million, except they didn't have $1 million. They had $100,000 income. And all of these taxes, when introduced, the American individual income tax was a 7% rate, top rate. Top rate was 7%, half of our bottom rate, okay, today. 7% top rate, and you had to make, in today's dollars, more than $11 million a year. Now half the people in the country pay the income tax, and nobody pays as little as 7%. That's less than the bottom rate. So the idea that a billionaire's tax is only going to hit billionaires, they haven't finished the sentence. We're going to just tax the rich. We're going to tax the rich, ... first. Then
Grover Norquest, President of Americans for Tax Reform, live on the air with us here. It almost supposedly happened this week, but it didn't. Supreme Court ruling on the president's tariffs, the legality of those tariffs. So what's the latest buzz there in Washington on how this is going to come down?
Well, the betting says 2-1 that much of the tariffs will be struck down. The Constitution is very clear that all taxes, all revenue issues have to not only pass Congress as opposed to be put in by the bureaucracy or by the president, but that any revenue matter has to start in the House of Representatives, because they didn't want the Senate to be able to start a tax increase. Only the House of Representatives, then the Senate has to do it, then the president has to. So that's very clear. Now, Congress has delegated to the president some powers on steel, aluminum, going one-on-one with a country that we have conflict with. But everybody pays 10% doesn't fall into either of those categories, or everybody pays 15%. So that's likely to be said that if you want this, you have to go to Congress and get them to pass it, because the congressmen and senators are hearing so much from businessmen and farmers in their states that is unlikely to pass in the House or the Senate. So I think what you'll see is much of the tax increases, not of the tariff increases, not all, not the ones to China, not the ones on steel perhaps, but the other ones, they'll say you can't do that unilaterally. That has to go through Congress. Congress has no appetite for doing that because China retaliating against our farmers has been devastating. People have seen prices go up in a way that they don't want them to. So I tend to think we'll have more stability, meaning tariffs won't change every 3 weeks. And that'll be very helpful for the economy. And the president can go to Congress on targeted issues if China's doing something terribly annoying and say, look, I need this to retaliate, as Congress did for Reagan when Japan was cheating on some of our deals. So I think there'll be targeted tariffs in the future, but not the broad-based ones unless Congress votes for it. But that is, again, I think unlikely because of the rather steep cost of the tariffs so far.
Grover, thanks for that comprehensive update. We'll keep an open line to you in the week ahead and see if we do ultimately get that U.S. Supreme Court ruling, which will be very big news. We'll keep an open line to you. All the best to you in that snowstorm back east. Hope you'll stay safe, and we'll get updates from you on that as well. Grover Norquest, President of Americans for Tax Reform, live with us here on Motec on Money on 790 KBC. Motec on Money continues here, 790 KBC. A new way to get ripped off thanks to technology. Heads up on this one. It's called ghost tapping, where unbeknownst to you, your credit card or digital wallet is tapped, allowing scammers to rack up unauthorized transactions in your dime without a card or phone ever leaving your possession. Let's get an update on that and some other scams out there. Paul Keener joins us live now at Guide Point Security. Paul, thanks for taking the call on this afternoon.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Thank you very much. What do we need to know about this ghost tapping? How does it work, and what can we do about it?
So there's a couple of things. One, ghost tapping refers to the tap to pay. So there's kind of two parts to it, right? So one is the tap to pay. So you take your card out and you're tapping the terminal. And the other part is where an attacker is through your compromised username and password or account credentials, is creating microtransactions on your card, so that way it looks like a subscription, right? So you don't really notice it. It's just below the fraud level, and the average fraud for that is about $1,000 before people realize what's going on. So on the ghost tapping piece, on the tap to pay, what happens is you go into a some sort of store, something like that, where you're using tap to pay, and the terminal itself is compromised. So this is an important distinction. It's not like somebody's sitting right next to you, right shoulder to shoulder. That's how close they would have to be to scan that card. But what they're doing is they're compromising the vendor. And so as you're tapping and that money goes in to the vendor, they're splitting off some of the funds, and so they're splitting off some of the funds, and they're selling that information to other criminals. Now, the interesting part of that is that on the tap to pay, there's encryption, right? So there's a token, a one-time token that's used in order to pay. And so when they sell this to other criminals, those tokens are invalid. And so they're criminalizing other criminals, which is a little bit funny, to be honest with you.
Wow. And we were sold on the idea that the tap to pay was supposedly even more secure than swiping. Is that not the case?
So on the scale of what is the least safe to the most safe, here's how it goes. So swipe. The second is insert. Go ahead. Sorry.
We lost you there for a second, so I don't want to miss any word you say on this. So say that again.
So the least safe way to pay is with the magnetic stripe. The second is when you insert your card into the terminal, because they can read the chip that's actually on the card. Tap to pay is actually fairly safe. It's just that the terminal itself gets compromised, and so you're seeing the attack occur after you've conducted the transaction. So the attack looks like it's against you, but it's really against the vendor you're using. And the most secure way is through Apple Pay. That's the most secure way to pay.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that. And so you mentioned that these charges come up as subscriptions or small amounts. What are some of the red flags there? Does it actually come up on a subscription that you already have, or maybe you can help guide us here?
Sure. So it'll look like an anonymous vendor. Kind of. It'll say some weird innocuous name like vendor so-and-so, vendor ABC, or an address. It won't actually come up as a subscription, but it'll look about the same amount, right? So it'll be, the microtransactions they're talking about are like $4.99, or maybe a monthly one at $95, or something that looks like a subscription. And I'll tell you that, my wife, my wife is one of the best fraud detectors, because she reviews our budget every week. And so she's looking at all these transactions, and she will ask me, hey, did you authorize this, or do you know about this transaction? It looks like Apple because it came through under Apple Pay. And so it doesn't actually show an actual subscription. It just shows the transaction type. And that's just really when like I said, when the vendor is actually compromised.
Very interesting. So, Paul Keener, we're on the air line with Paul Keener at Guide Point Security on this ghost tapping. What about somebody physically getting close to your wallet and tapping the cards in your wallet? Does that happen?
So there is some academic research that shows that, given the right circumstances, that the tap to pay function can be compromised. But right now it's really more academic than anything. So when you say, when people, and I'm really glad that you're having me on so we can talk about this to show kind of what the real threat is versus what the implied threat is. So when they talk about the RFID scanning, when you're in large areas and you are, like maybe at a football game or something along those lines where they're using a lot of digital or tap-to-pay type of access, you'll see people come up and they will scan a card. But when they're scanning, they're getting some credentials more for like if you're using a pass to go into a building. When a tap-to-pay, when a card is used for tap-to-pay, it creates a one-time token for that transaction. And so in order for somebody to use that, it has to be authorized. Now, is it possible that an attacker would have a device that would generate a authorized transaction? Yes, it's possible. There are, as it becomes more difficult to conduct criminal activities, criminals become more and more advanced as our security advances. But those are very, very rare type of events.
Well, thanks for explaining that so very thoroughly. And what about online transactions? And by the way, when you do detect these transactions, obviously you want to report that to your bank right away. And usually they have a fraud department that looks into this, right? And those charges can be reversed.
That is correct. So there's a couple of things that you can do. One is if you are ever in a place where you think that a transaction is fraudulent, the first thing you should do, as you had mentioned, is contact your financial institution. And time is of the essence, especially if you happen to get compromised on something and it's a large amount of money. It's important to let the bank know, I think this is a fraudulent transaction, and then they can reverse those charges. It's also important that if you do find yourself as part of some sort of a fraud issue, that you...
Absolutely, Paul. You've given us some great information here, a lot to think about. Paul Keener at Guide Point Security, live with us here on Motec on Money on 790 KABC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz. I'll be back with more at 4 Monday, 790 KBC.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.